think I'm live, but I don't know where. I'm completely confused, if I'm honest. Seems to be people in the chat. Yeah, no, it's supposed to go back to the picture. Don't panic. I am live. I, hello. Yes, hopefully they can. Yeah, they should have video now. Hopefully they'll have video now. Let me just move my chat over here. Yes, Leona is saying exactly what I'm thinking. It's like it's my inner voice is in my head that I'm saying, and she's repeating it, but I can't say it live because there's a lot of profanities, folks. Okay, yes, thank you everybody so much for sticking with me. Sorry, sorry. It must be YouTube. It has to be YouTube. I'm sorry. The live feed was set up how I set up the Facebook and how I set up my test feed last night. Nothing was changed. I used the same stream key. I used everything. And when I hit live, it was saying that I was live this end, and there was nothing coming out your end, except it was playing, because when you went back to the to the replay of it, it was all running. So I don't know what's going on. YouTube must be faffing about with settings or something, and it's changing all the time. So I'm sorry about that, guys. Thank you for everybody being here. It looks like I've got a few people there anyway that did stick with me. Thank you. Let's try and make a show out of this. It's not quite what I had planned, and I'm sorry about that. But let's forget about that now and kick into it. I'm going to take a slug of tea and let's go with it. Is the feed okay now, folks? Can you let me know? Okay. Right, feed is perfect. Steve's not so perfect. Steve's a little bit stressed, but let's do this anyway. Right, welcome everybody to the first episode of a new series, which is this, the beginner series, episode 1. We are going to do a set of 4 coasters. For those of you that are pretty new to YouTube and new to turning and all that, and you've got a lathe and you've got a phone set up, go into your workshops and maybe work along with me. You're perfectly welcome to do that. These Tuesday lives are going to be Turn with Steve lives. Hopefully, if they work in the future, fingers crossed. This is kind of, I tell you, you don't know how close it just came to me just switching everything off and not doing it again, but I'm not going to let it beat me. So we're going to kick into it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do it as if everyone is a brand new starter, a new learner, and we're going to just gradually, as we go through the weeks, we're going to move up and advance and get into more technical stuff. We're going to do a couple of beginner projects and stuff like that and go through the tools and all that, but it's going to be the whole kit and caboodle. It's going to be everything from what wood to use, what tools you need, the safety equipment, and then we're going to move on to sharpening and all sorts. But just for this one, we're going to do the 4 coasters. I just want to go through this very quickly for any brand new turners that are out there. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this is going to be a video that's going to be out there for beginners to watch. So let's go into this. Right, first off, before we do anything, I've got a bit of a slideshow here. Before we do anything, before we start anywhere near the lathe, you need your basic PPE. You need your face shield, and you need some kind of smock or clothing that isn't loose, that has baggy sleeves or anything like that. Now, as you can see in the picture here, you've got your lower end face shield. That's just your cheap, I don't know, this kind of thing you use for your weed whacker or grass stuff outside. It will do. It's not the ideal mask, but it will protect your face if something flies off. You're still going to get a bashing, but you're not going to lose pieces of your face. So that will do the job. Then below that, you've got the bionic, I think that's the bionic mask they call it, which is more higher end face shield or middle range face shield. It's good, strong. It's supported all the way around the actual shield part, and it's a little bit more expensive, but it's going to protect your face a bit better. And then you can go really high end, which has all the breathing apparatus and all that. And you've also got your smock. Now, I would suggest, if you're going to be doing a lot of wood turning, to get yourself a smock. It has a way of tightening up sleeves, so you haven't got baggy sleeves near the moving machinery, and it also stops the shavings from getting into parts where you don't want it. It's nice and tight around the neck, and you have all your pockets and things for putting tools and stuff like that in. As you can see, the guy there has got some kind of tool hanging out the back pocket there. So that's your basic PPE, personal protective equipment, if you don't know what that stands for. For this project, like I said, we're going to go to very, very basics. Okay, when you get a lathe, new or second-hand, mostly second-hand will have bits missing, but you should get all the things that I'm going to mention tonight. When you get a new lathe, you will definitely get these. These are a basic faceplate. This is what we're going to be using tonight. We're going to be using the bottom one of the two here. You'll get a 6-inch or 150mm, excuse me, faceplate, or a 3-inch or an 80mm faceplate. They generally come with your lathe, the smaller one with the smaller lathes and the bigger one with the bigger lathes. That's pretty much how it goes. And then they should have the internal thread to fit the spindle on your lathe. So that you should get those, but you're going to need one of those for the project that we're going to be doing tonight. And then you're going to need a basic drive center. This is pretty much the kind of drive center that comes with your lathe. It's the lower end drive. It's got 4 gripper barbs on it, and it's got a spike in the middle. It's got the Morse taper to suit the inner taper of your headstock, and it goes in and just slots in, and that drives the piece of wood that you're going to be using. And then you go to the other end. I'm going to go through the lathe in very briefly in a second. Is your basic revolving live tail centers. They're the type of ones that you would get with a lathe. They're the lower end live centers. The one on the right is slightly smaller, and you can't take the center pin out. The one on the left you can. The head spins on a bearing, and again the shaft is to suit whatever your tail stock size is, Morse taper 1, 2 or 3. And then we're going to need the basic tools. These are roughly a 5 set that you would buy from any tool manufacturer. If you were to buy a beginner's set, this is pretty much what you get in a beginner's set. You'd get a 1-inch spindle roughing gouge. We're starting from the left, we're going to go across the top, and then you can read it anyway. Top left is a spindle roughing gouge. The next one along is a spindle gouge. They tend to have a shallow flute on them. You can tell the difference between a bowl and a spindle gouge. A spindle gouge will have a shallow flute, and the bowl gouge, which is next, would have a deeper flute. I'll show you anyway on the camera as we go along. Then dropping down to the one on the left, you'll have a kind of a round nose scraper, or some have a square scraper. They're 3/4 inch normally, and a 3/4 inch parting tool, which is a diamond type parting tool. They're the 5 basic tools that you are going to need to do any beginner wood turning and go on to do the more advanced stuff. They are the 5 essential tools to have in the kit, and then the rabbit hole opens and it gets much more involved, but we're not going to go there yet. So that's pretty much the slideshow. I can go back to that if you want me to, but that's pretty much what we're going to need. So now I'm going to just hit this button here, and we're going to go over to number 4, camera, and I'm going to go through just quickly basically your lathe. If there's any questions and you are new, I know this isn't rocket science to a lot of you that are in the chat, but there are new turners that are going to be watching this, and I want to start from the beginning and work up. Okay, so bear with me, guys. I'm not going to go on too much with this. The business end of the lathe is this end. This is your tailstock. Let me see if I can zoom out a bit on that. So there we go. Okay, so we've got the tailstock here. This has your drive. This is a bigger lathe. This is a SIP Pro lathe. It's a bigger lathe. It has a revolving headstock, so I can twist and turn the headstock to suit any angles that I want to work. It has variable speed. It has the on-off button, and it has a Morse taper 1 drive, spindle drive, and it's a 3/4 inch thread on the outside of it. Then you've got your tailstock on the other end. This is the bed, sorry. The bed is what it's all sitting on, the bed of the lathe. We have the tool rest. That holds the rest for holding your tools. We're going to go through this as we use it, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. And this is your banjo. Thank you, Leona. I thought I said it, but obviously I didn't. Leona is in my ear, by the way, folks, just to let you know. She is my earworm, as we lovingly call her. So we have our banjo, we have our tool rest. We'll then go over to our headstock. We have a headstock. This is the big lump that slides up and down and pins your wood between the tailstock and the headstock. It has a quill. This is the quill that goes in and out. This one has a Morse taper 2. I don't know why SIP did 2 different size Morse tapers on this. It's very confusing, but that's the way this lathe is. It has a Morse taper 2 quill on the tailstock, and you'd wind it in and out with the wheel. Both ends have hollow head and tailstock, so that you can not only use a long boring drill, which we'll do when we do a lamp, through the tailstock, but you can also use a knockout bar to get through and knock stuff out. But again, that's all stuff that we will go into as we're going along. That's pretty much the basics of the lathe. Right. The pieces that I just mentioned grab these. The parts that we're going to need to do this particular project. This is the faceplate that I was talking about. Let me just change to... So this is the faceplate. Now what I've done with this faceplate, and it's a handy tip if you are new, sometimes the faceplate will be too short or too narrow for the length of your spindle. So what I've done is, just with this one, is I've glued some nylon washers to the back of it to make up the difference in length of the spindle. I'll show you that when we wind it on, but it means that when you wind it on, the spindle doesn't stick out this end and dig into the piece of wood that you've got fixed against it. So and it's right back against your spindle. But we'll go through that. But that is your faceplate. That is the 80mm faceplate that I was showing on the slides. And then we have these are our live centers. So they're the exact ones that are in the picture. This one, you can take the pin in and out in the center and make it into a cup to hold different pieces. It's on a bearing and it spins, as does this one, but this is a cheaper version. It's just literally just a bearing and a spike. That's what comes with the cheaper end lathes. That's what came with this particular lathe. And then you have your cheap drives, which are these. That's just a cheap drive that came with this lathe. The 4 barbs and the Morse taper one goes into the headstock, as I will show you now. Everyone keeping up to now? Is the feed okay? That's the main thing. Good. That's what I like to hear. Alright, let's zoom in here a little bit. Alright, so this, as I said, is the headstock. This is the business end. That is where your drive center goes. That's the one that doesn't spin. The solid drive center goes into that end. Okay, and then we're going to put our drive center, which is the spinning one, into the tailstock end, just like that. You don't have to hammer them in or anything like that. The pressure will hold them in. The Morse tapers are designed, tapered, that's why they're called the Morse tapered, with friction to hold them in place. Okay, let's get to actually doing the piece. I have a piece of beechwood here. It's spalted. We won't get into that for the beginner, but it just means that it's a fancy piece of wood. Or mouldy, as the owner said. And in the end, in this end, let me change to the camera so I'm over on 2. I'm not sure if it's going to show, but I've drawn a circle kind of as big as I can either end with a compass, the owner's favourite tool, which has also given me 2 centre marks, one there and one there. And if we take a centre punch, you can use a centre punch, or you can just use a sharpened piece of metal or anything with a spike, anything at all, a nail, something like that if you don't have a centre punch, and just bang it just gently in both ends so you've got a divot, and that gives you a centre point either end. Okay, those centre points are going to come in handy later on, and I will explain. We're then going to put our piece of wood in between the drive and the live. We're going to find our marks. You'll see that it's pretty well balanced before we even tighten it up. Let me move the camera again to 4. So I haven't tightened that up at all. It's just sitting there on the spikes, and as you can see, it's spinning around quite freely nicely there. I'm going to push my tailstock up, and I'm going to tighten it up nice and hard. And then I'm going to wind my quill in nice and tight so that the barbs hit this side, and so my spike has pretty much gone in this side, and that's going to cause enough pressure to hold this piece of wood for it to spin. I have just got to do one thing first before I do this, because while I was doing my demo earlier on Facebook, I didn't turn my lathe down, which was very bold of me. It's a good lesson. Okay, so make sure that before you start your lathe up with the piece of wood on, that it's turned down to its minimum setting. Most new lathes now, when you turn them off, they reset back to their lowest speed. This one doesn't. It's the cheaper end of the market. I'm going to tighten up my smock, and I'm going to tighten up my sleeves. I'm not going to have any loose clothing hanging around this piece of spinning wood. I'm going to get my face shield ready. This is the lower end. This is what most beginners would have, so that's what I'm going to use. I have the very dusty from today, but I have the JSP. That's the higher end one, and one that really is a good mask, but very expensive. Okay, so I'm going to tighten this up again, as tight as I can get it. It's holding that now, the drive's got it. We want to make sure that it's clear from the tool rest. Spin the piece of wood before we turn the lathe on. Make it as clear from the tool rest. And that's good. Alright, we're going to go to the side camera now because I want to show you here. 3. Okay, so just here is your tool rest, as we discussed earlier. And when we're going roughing this, which means we're going to turn it from square block to round, you may have a tree log in there or something like that, but we're going to go from square to round. So we're going to be knocking off these corners. We're going to be using the spindle roughing gouge, which is this one, as we saw in the picture. It's 1 inch and it's a good deep flute on it. We're not going to get into the angles too much because that will come with sharpening, but that is pretty much the factory grind that's on that when it comes from the store. We're going to set up our tool rest so that it's just below center. When I say that, center of your spindle is here. Our tool rest wants to be probably half the width of the quill down from the center. You'll work it out to suit yourself when you're learning. You'll kind of find the heights that suit you. Some people like it really low, some people like it high, but to start out, that's where you want to start. Okay, that's it. We're ready to start turning. We'll make sure that we're all tightened up. We make sure that we've got our face shield on. This is fun, trying to get this on top of all the equipment I've got on. The sound may go a little bit wibbly wobbly, but we'll get over it. And before I start, is there any questions, Leona? The knob on the quill, sorry, yes, so that is the locking pin on the back here. That locks the quill and it stops it from wobbling because the quill is slightly looser than the spline that it goes into, so it will wobble slightly. So it tightens that. It has a slot in the back and it tightens that, but it also stops it from traveling back. If this handle is rattling and it loosens, it stops it from traveling back and letting go of the wood. If that explains it. So we're going to start off with our lowest speed. I've got it set down to the lowest I can have, and that is spinning at, that's spinning at about 500 there now. You can bring it up a little bit. If it starts to wobble, that's when you're pushing the boundaries and you want to click it back down again a notch. And you want to put your left hand on top of the roughing gouge. You want to place it on top of the tool rest, applying a little bit of pressure down on the tool rest. We're going to keep the tool down and slightly turned to 45. We're going to approach the wood till it starts biting, and then we're going to start traveling along the piece of wood, backwards and forwards, moving our body, not our arms. You don't want to be swinging your arms in and out like this, because what will happen is the corner of the gouge will dig into the wood and you'll get what they call a catch, and it will make a loud bang and maybe rip the wood, or it can even pull the wood from the lathe. So you want a small bit of pressure down on the quill, slightly turn your gouge to about 45, approach the wood till it starts cutting, and then you want to move your body back and forwards. Okay, as we go in, we want to tighten up our tool rest, move it in a little bit more, and as we get more rounder we can start bringing the speed up, but for now we're just going to keep backwards and forwards, taking off the corners. can use this tool straight down. You don't have to turn it 45. You can go in straight. Some people like to do it that way. It will cut that way as well. It's got a cutting angle the whole way around. Yes. Okay, so you can, as you can see, you can use this tool by placing your thumb on top as well, and on your tool rest you've got a slot. You can place your finger against the slot. You can put the tool down on the rest, and you can apply the pressure with your thumb, and that gives you more guide to stop the tool from twisting or moving. You can try it that way. Some people find it a bit awkward starting off. That's more for refined, delicate stuff. So, I mean, when you're doing this real roughing, you're better off having your hand on top and really kind of getting in there and having a good grip. So that's starting to bounce now. We can move our tool rest back in. My tool rest gets a little bit antsy at times, but as I said, it's the cheaper end lathe that I have here. Go. Bring the tool rest back in again. I'm going to bring the speed up just slightly on this. I'm doing about 1,000 revs per minute there now. You don't have to really push into it hard, you know, let the tool do the work. I'll change the camera angle there slightly for you, so you can see the top of the tool working. And you can take chunks out of it like this as well. Occasionally you'll have to just tighten up the quill as well as the wood loosens up on the drive, especially if it's spalted wood like this. It can be a bit softer. And it's just a matter of nibbling off the corners until you're completely round. Always holding the handle into your waist gives the tool some support. And you can start doing the woodturner's dance. Okay, again we can move in. We're getting rounder now. You always want to be, I always say, about finger depth away from the wood. Finger thickness. Can bring the speed up a bit more again now. It's getting more balanced. The faster the wood is spinning, the better it's going to cut. Okay. Leona's just saying that our connection is patchy, but if it goes off, I'll call you back, Leona, okay? Or you call me back. Thank you. Yes, I can zoom in a bit for you. That's no problem. 1 second, I'm just tightening up my quill because I'll loosen it up a bit. I can do everything, me, with this technology, you know, except go live. Let me see. Zoom. There you go, folks. do we have any new turners out there in the chat? And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. That's what I'm here for. And if I'm busy at the time, Leona knows the answer. She'll shout it to you anyway. Bring up the speed again. Yeah. Hold on a second, I'm just going to check my... Okay. I'll see if that gets any better, Leona, okay? Alright, and as you can see that the wood is cutting a lot better now that the closer we are getting to round. As you can see, we're getting very close around. We've just got a flat spot there. We're almost there. We've just got a couple of flat spots. We're going to move in one more time. I'd say we'll do it. And we can also bring the speed up even more. We're going at about 1800 there. Now, you don't have to go faster. Just stick to the speed that you're comfortable with. I've always turned at higher speeds. Trina is new. Hi Trina, I hope you're learning here. Do you have a lathe, Trina, already? And tools and stuff? I'm sorry, I didn't hear half that. Technology's kicking our ass tonight, folks. Okay, so we are almost round. We've got one small flat spot just there. And the rest is round. It's going to be a pretty piece of wood, this. So we're just going to finish that off. And then we're going to go to faceplate. Now you'll have some people will say that, including my best friend, that this gouge is supposed to work that you are cutting towards the flute, so it's supposed to throw the material out from the flute, but this tool works any way you want it to, and as long as you're using it safely, it will cut in any direction. It's quite a universal tool. Pen turners mainly just use a spindle roughing gouge to turn their pens. There we go. Now to find out if you're round, you can just place the back spine of your tool on the top, and if it runs along the top without bouncing up and down, pretty much tells you it's round. And we are round there now. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. dusty wood this. I would normally have an extractor on if I'm turning here in my workshop, but it's quite noisy and you won't be able to hear me. Alright, so we are round. We're down to about, I think it's about 4 inches round, which would be 100 mil. But we've still got quite wonky edges here. They're not quite straight. So what we're going to do is, just on the headstock side, is we're going to clean it up a little bit. And we're going to use our next tool. So that's a spindle roughing gouge. We're going to use a parting tool. This is a diamond parting tool, the same as I had in the drawing. Let me come over here and show you in camera 3. So that's a diamond parting tool. This is the crown tool. Most of my tools are crown. And it just goes down to a point and it's used on its spine like so. And that is the cutting edge just there, as you will see now. It's held the same into your body onto the tool rest. Now the tool rest does have to be slightly out more. Maybe a finger and a half in thickness, probably the best way to describe it from the workpiece. And the spine goes on the top of the tool rest, and again you can either hold it with your thumb and place your finger in the groove of the tool rest, or you can put your whole hand on top to support it. Same height tool rest, sorry this mask, same height tool rest. And we're just going to bring the tool handle down, and we're going to start just peeling back the wood with the cutting edge, and then we're going to lean it in and slowly raise the handle up as we move towards the center of the spindle. Oh, losing my words tonight. Okay, so I'll show you a couple of actions from this camera angle, and then I'll show you from the top. Again, same speed. Onto the tool rest, into our body, supporting it. Slowly bring it in, tool down at an angle, start it just cutting, and then we're going to just push slowly. And we're going to move it in towards the center of the spindle, and as we're doing it, we just slightly raise the handle like so. Okay, I'll do that one more time from this camera angle, then we'll do it from the top so you can see it cutting. Bring it in, slowly raise the tool. We're only taking about 1 or 2 mil off at a time here, just when we're beginning. And we're just going to stop before we get to the drive center. We don't want to hit metal with our tools because metal makes them blunt and broken. Okay, let me turn that off and we'll move the camera so you're looking from above. And we'll do one more cut again. So it's the same. Just get it biting in the wood. Bring it in and just raise up the tool handle slightly, moving in, pushing in slightly, raising it back until we meet the center of the spindle, just like that. And that gives us a nice flat spot. I'm going to do the same the other end. Stopping before we get to the live center. Just like that, that's enough. And that's just tidy both ends up and give us a nice symmetrical block to work with. Okay. Now we've just got to get rid of the bump on one side of this. Now it's quite difficult to do when you're only working between centres, and when you want your let me lift this helmet off for a second. When you want to put your faceplate on, because obviously, let me take this off and show you. Like I said, that's a removable centerpiece. Okay, so now we've got bumps here that are going to get in the way of our faceplate. They're not going to allow it to sit nice and flat. So what you can do is you want to get yourself a nice saw. I have a saw here somewhere. I saw it somewhere. Haha, I saw it somewhere. Maybe I didn't. I had it earlier. I swear I did. Okay. Maybe that's what my son came in and borrowed. He borrowed something. Anyway, you would take your normal handsaw and you would cut them off. I'm going to use my chop saw for speed because I can't find my saw. Bear with me a second, it's going to be quite noisy. Noise. No, it's not, it's got to be plugged in. Hey Leona, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I can, yeah. Okay, so I've just cut that off with the saw. You can just cut that knob off with just a hand saw. Okay, and now my faceplate will sit on there nice and tight. We've still got our little dent there. I didn't cut the whole thing right off. We've still got our little dent. That's how much I took. And I've got this little tool here. I'll show you how to make one of these at another time. This is a center finder. We've got our nub there. We'll put our faceplate in, centralize it, put our little center finder in there so it gets our faceplate to the center. That's in the middle, and then we're going to put 4 good screws in this to hold it. Now, because this is slightly punkier wood, I'm putting quite long screws in this. Just get them started first so it doesn't move the faceplate. And what the face, never use drywall screws, as Leona just reminded me to tell you, because they break very easily. These are your typical woodworker's screw, very strong, and you want the length of screw to suit the wood that you're using. Now, as I said, this is quite soft wood, punky wood, so I'm going in maybe a little bit deeper than I need to, but I'm not going to use this back part. Now that's our faceplate on. It's not going to be 100% perfect, so we're going to have to true it up again in a second. Excuse me, I've got the hickety cups. If we get one of the screws that I just used there, turn it to the side, get some way of marking the wood, get our length of screw from the top of the faceplate to the bottom of the screw and put a line. That tells us how far we can go before we hit the screw, because obviously the screws have gone in there. We don't want to hit that screw with any of our tools because it's going to damage our tools. Okay, That's our faceplate on. You can add a little bit of hot glue if you've got a hot glue gun. You can add a bit of hot glue around it just to give it that extra little bit of support. It's up to you. We then get what we call our knockout bar. I will show you what that does now. You'll get that with every lathe. It's just a long bar. It slides in through your spindle, and you don't use a hammer on it. That's why it's got a nice round plastic ball. Just pull it back and you give it a couple of knocks, and it will knock, if your lathe is in good working order and maintained well, it will just knock the Morse taper out of your spindle. Put that somewhere safe. And then you can screw on your faceplate. You'll also get a spanner with your lathe, it holds the spindle. Just tighten that on. And this is where the washers come in handy. They allow it to tighten up nice and tight. There you go. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit wobbly. Never get it perfectly in the center, unless you're really lucky. Bring up your tailstock again. Don't be tempted to pull on this and force it into place, because all you're going to do is pull it off the screws and make it loose. Just literally tighten up your tailstock and wind it in wherever that faceplate holds it. If it was in a chuck, if you've got a chuck on, I mean, most beginners don't have chucks, but if you've got your chuck on, you'll have that slight bit of movement to recenter it again. But with a faceplate, if you're slightly off, you're just going to have to return it and get it round again. So that's what we'll do. Tighten that up again. Face shield on. Take your marker, and where you've marked your line for the thickness of your screws, depth of your screws, just make that line all the way round, so you know where those screws are. And tighten everything down, turn on your lathe, and we're just going to true that up again with the roughing gouge just quickly. It's only a little bit off, it's not too bad. You only have to go up to your line. We're not going to be using all this anyway, we're not making super thick coasters. Any questions so far, Leona? Can you still hear me? Okay, thank you. A cup, that's Joe. Yeah, I can do a cup. I can do that on the Facebook Live, maybe. Yeah, if you're on Facebook, Joe. Is it Joe or Joey? Joe. Oh, is it Joey? Okay, yeah. Oh, Joy. I'm sorry. Joy. Oh, Joy English, is it? Yeah, Joy English. I see her in the chat there now. Yes, I can do a cup, but as Leona just said, it's a much more advanced turn-in. Okay, so we've trued that up now. I'm just going to be honest with you, now I know where my line is from how much I've taken out. I'm just going to do a little bit of truing up just here, just to take the wobble out when it's turning. There you go. So we're nice and round there, and we're still a good size for our coasters. I mean, coasters can be as big as you want them. I'm probably going to do them quite big. That way anything that you want to put on them will fit. Turn them to whatever size you want, to be honest with you. So now we've got that on a faceplate. Let me just turn my lathe down. Old habits die hard. Now you've got that on a faceplate, you can actually take your tailstock away, and you can stand away from the lathe, stand to the side, just in case there's any problems with the screws or anything like that. If it does come off, it's not going to hit you. Stand to the side, turn on your lathe, and it holds there. We've got a little bit of a wobble there. Again, that will get fixed in a second. I'm beeping the owner's connection. One second, folks. I'm just going to reconnect to Leona. So that I've got Leona in my ear. Okay. Trying to call Leona back. 1 second. There you go. Hello. That's okay. That's a technology day. It's okay. We'll get over it. Right. So we're going to finish truing this up, because obviously there was a bit of a bend in that. The tailstock was holding it. Now, when you've got a piece of wood this long on a tailstock, you will get some vibration, and it can be a little bit daunting, the noises you get from it. Don't panic. As long as you take it easy, you should be fine. And your tools are sharp. If you're going to start turning, you need to get a good sharpening system straight away, really, because sharp tools can be a bit of a pain. Alright, so we're true, we're round, we're on our faceplate. Now we're going to start having some fun with some coasters. Going to clean up this front edge. I'll move you over to this one, and I can zoom you in again as well. Bring up the speed again. Using the parting tool again, and we're just going to take off that nubbity nub. Again, we're using our body to support it, pushing it down on the tool rest, taking small pieces at a time. Now there are a lot of designs of coasters. There we go. And that's just cleaned up that side. That front should have got rid of the little knobbity knob in the middle. So there we go, we've got a nice flat front. Now, as I said, there's a lot of design for coasters. You can just have flat ones, just discs that you put on the table. We're working on the lathe. We're beginners, so we're going to just do a basic shape. Okay, a little dip in the center that will hold the cup, and a bit of a bead on the outside. And that's as far as we're going to go with these. We're not going to go too fancy. As I said, it's a beginner's project. So I will move the camera over there now. I'm going to move it to an angle where you can see it better. So just for now, I'm going to go to 2, and you can watch me faff about with this camera. What kind of cups are they, Joy? Okay. Yeah, it depends on how thin you're going with the cup as well. What kind of cups they are, what you're going to be using them for. Are you going to be putting? Obviously, you're going to be putting liquid into them, so you're going to have to seal them as well with some kind of epoxy or something. Okay, so we have our disc, and now we're going to do a little bit of detail on the inside here, and we're going to use our we're going to start with our spindle gouge. I'll show you what that looks like in 1 second. Put these away so I know where ice tumblers with ice water. Yeah, you'll probably have to put some kind of epoxy lining in them, or you can buy metal liners. Some people get stainless steel metal liners from Wish or somewhere like that, and yeah, you can do it that way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to decide on how thick we're going to make our beaded wall on this side. So I'm going to take a ruler. Everyone should have a ruler in their workshop. And I'm going to measure 15 mil, because these are quite big coasters. I'm going to measure 15 mil in from the edge. Use my tool rest to support my pen or my pencil, whatever you want to use, and we're just going to hold it on that mark, and we're going to spin the piece round, and that gives us a rough mark to where we want to work. Okay, now the bottom of a big mug is roughly about 3 1/4 round. Is that going to fit? No. Alright, so we need to make that a bit. Let's go. Alright, we're going to make it a 10 mil. We'll go with 10 mil instead of 15. There we go. Ignore the inside line. Ignore this one. I'm going to turn it away in a second anyway, but ignore that one. Right, so we're going to get our spindle gouge. That is this one. Remember, with the shallow flute, bowl gouge looks like this. We're not using the bowl gouge today. Bowl gouge has a deep flute, spindle gouge has a shallow flute. That's the difference. Bowl gouge, spindle gouge, shallow flute. Okay, and again we won't get into grinds yet. This is a fingernail grind. They don't come with that grind. They come with a much lesser angled grind. Okay, so we're going to turn on our lathe, keep it at the high speed. We're going to put our tool on the tool rest, hand down on the tool rest, and we're going to do what they call a pull cut with the top flat part of the of the cutting edge. And we're just going to pull the tool slowly towards us, not digging it in, just taking a small amount, just stopping before we get to our line. From the center again, doing it again, just before we get to the line, and again, and we're just taking that center away slightly. And you can make these as deep as you want, you don't need to go super deep. And that's just a basic pull cut that you're doing there. Again, you can go in this way, and you can cut towards the center. Just like that. Tool rest is just slightly high there. Let's bring it down again. You want it just below center on this when you're using the gouge, so that the tip of the gouge, when you lay it flat on the tool rest, just lines up with the center of the piece. There we go. So now we haven't quite gone into the corner there. It's kind of curved down into the center, and what we want is we want a nice wall. So what we can do is we can take our parting tool. We will need to bring our tool rest out a little bit. Remember, we need a bigger gap for our parting tool to work efficiently. And we're just going to line up the edge of our parting tool with our line, and we're just going to let it cut in gently to the depth that we need. There we go. Go down as deep as you want to go. And then you can use your gouge again just to blend all that in and tidy it up. Again, easier. I'm going to move our tool rest in again because we're using a gouge. I'm just going to come in with our gouge, and we're just going to meet that where we just in with our parting tool. There we go. You can come in then, you can hold it here, and you can use the other edge just to get in the corner there, just to tape it in. And you'll be able to see, it's hard to see on the camera, you'll be able to see when you're pretty flat, but I will demonstrate in 1 second how you can tell using a ruler. take your ruler and you put it against the flat there like that, on top of your tool rest, you'll be able to see that your cut's quite even and that there's no bumps and lumps and jumping up and down. You'll be able to see the edge of your ruler and the base of your coaster. But that's a basic cut into your coaster. Okay, you can start sanding that now if you wanted to. It's pretty clean. But what you could do is you can take your gouge. Again, you're a beginner. It's up to you how far you go with this, but I'm just going to show you how, as a beginner, you can put a little bit of fancy into something basic. So we know that we're 10mm on the outside here. If we mark in, I don't know, if we go 15mm, give ourselves another little mark there, draw our line again. We can take our gouge, and just for a little bit of fancy, we can just take the very tip of our gouge and just put a little groove in there, just like that. That's it, that's all you need to do. Gives it a little bit of detail, and you know, it just makes it look as if it's just not a plain piece of wood. It's a nice gentle detail. Okay, we're then going to come back round to the side. We're going to decide how thick we want our coasters. Again, we're going to need our ruler. We want them all to be as close to the same as possible. I think a 10mm thick coaster is plenty. Don't want it too thick. Again, put your pen on the tool rest. Oh, that moved. On the tool rest, draw it round. Just gives you a rough line of where you're going. Set your tool rest for your parting tool, so it's a little bit further away from the workpiece as normal. Turn on your lathe, and with your parting tool, you're just going to bring the edge of your tool to your line and just start cutting in. Just gently, don't dig in really hard. Just let the tool do the work. Keeping the bevel on the side. Now with some parting tools, this one not so much because it narrows in, but with some parting tools you'd need to just make your slot a little bit wider than the tool. So just take another 1 or 2mm off the other side, not your line side, and that'll give it a little bit of room to stop the friction grabbing hold of it and getting tight. Go in nice and straight. If you wander at all, you could start cutting in to the bottom of your coaster. Okay, just get down probably about an inch, leave it at that for now, and then you can shape the outside. We're just going to bevel off the top 2 corners, so we're going to go just lightly with the cutting edge of the gouge. We're going to round off that corner, and we're going to round off the bottom too, just like that. There we go. That gives us our basic coaster shape. Rounded top, rounded bottom. It's a bead. It's got our shape in the front. Then we want to sand it quickly. Take away your tool rest. Bring down the speed of your lathe down to around about, well, a couple of 100 to 300 is enough. The lowest speed my lathe goes is 500, unfortunately. Then we're going to go with sandpaper. When you're a beginner, you're probably going to use quite a low grade sandpaper to start with until you get used to your tools and doing your cutting. I'm going to start at 120. You'll probably start at maybe 80 or 100, depending on how good you get with using your tools and how good the wood is cut. And you just sand it basically. There's nothing to sand in. Have it on a low speed and sand until smooth. Any questions while I do a little bit of sanding, Leona, if you can still hear me? Brendan Bacon Soda. Hello Brendan, how are you? How are things? Hope you're keeping well. And I hope family is well too. Excellent. Okay, the reason for a low speed when sanding joy is because of friction. Friction is not wood's friend. There's a couple of reasons why you sand at a low speed. One is that if you're doing it at a high speed, it's going to make your sandpaper work a lot harder. It's going to wear your sandpaper out quite quickly. The second and the main reason is friction. Friction does a couple of things. Number one, it'll burn your fingers or your hands, and you should never wear gloves when working around a lathe unless they're fingerless type ones, and even then I wouldn't advise it. But also friction can damage the wood in a lot of ways. It can discolor it, it can burn it, and it can also warp it. If you're turning anything particularly thin, or if the wood has got a little bit of moisture in it, if you sand too fast, it will dry out the piece with friction and cause them to crack, split, bend or break. It happens a lot in wood turning with friction. Even with the heat of your tools, sometimes if you're using a blunt tool, it can cause a lot of friction. It can cause damage to the wood. Wood is a natural product, a natural made thing, and it has a certain amount of moisture in it. Always, it's never totally dry. It can be 100 years old and still have moisture in it. And you take that moisture out and crack, bend, break. So, never get your piece too warm. There we go, that's sanded. That's 120 I've gone there. Go 180 now. Work your way up. Work your way up, through the grits. It depends on what products you've got and what sort of finish you want. A good finish on a piece, if you haven't got any abrasive paste or anything like that, is probably, I don't know, probably 300 or 400 for a nice smooth finish. A lot of people only go to 240. Sometimes that's enough, especially for the likes of a coaster or something like that that's going to be thrown around and knocked around. That's all I'm going to go to, is 240 on these. Getting all the grooves the best you can. I'll go to 240 now. Again, we'll do a live show with finishes, you know, and what finishes to use and what the best way to finish things. We're not going to get too much into the finishing tonight. All you need to know really with this project is just sand it as smooth as you like it, because I'm only going to be doing an oil finish on these. We're not going to be doing any waxes or anything like that. Okay, that's a 240 finish. I'm happy with that. It's, like I say, it's a sported wood. I like the fact that it's kind of a little bit punky, a little bit age looking. I like that. That's going to suit my house, to be honest with you. Excuse me, it's hard to bend down there. Right, so like I said, what you could do is you could use an abrasive paste now. You could put a sanding sealer in it or something like that, but just because for speed tonight, I'm just going to be using a bit of baby oil for a finish. This is just your normal Johnston's baby oil that you can get in the shop, and it would be the equivalent to mineral oil in the States. So it's just a basic oil. Just put a bit onto the cloth like that. This stuff smells nice, and we're just going to rub it in, and it's going to bring up the lovely characteristics of the wood. It'll get in all the little pits and stuff. Yeah, I can do what I do is I can do a live as well, maybe a walk around the shop. At the moment, the dust extraction, I mean the Hoover is quite quiet because I've got it plumbed through the wall and it's in the shed next door, but the actual extractor, air extractor cleaner, is that little bit noisier. There we go. I'll just show you on the other camera what that looks like. It's kind of pretty looking. Don't know if you can see that. But that's near enough your first coaster done. It might take a few more coats of oil, but you can do that when the coaster's been parted off, which we are going to do now. Parting off basically just means we're going to cut it from the main piece of wood. It's the final cut you do, because once you've removed it, you can't put it back on the lathe. Well, sometimes you can if you've got a chuck. Okay, let's part this off. Again, we're going to go in with our parting tool. Oh, let's change the camera so you can see from the top. And again, we're not going to force it. We don't want to put pressure on the piece of wood. Plus the fact any vibration will cause the tool to cut badly. As you get closer to the headstock, the vibration will get less. Excuse me, I just had a fly under my hat there. Good Lord. wasn't pleasant. My regular viewers would know that I'm not too keen on bugs. Now, because this is a bit of a punky bit of wood, I'm going to start supporting this. Don't grip it, don't actually grab it, but just support it ready for when it comes away from the main piece. There we go, just like that, parted off. And all we're going to do is we're going to take a sharp knife, or you can take a piece of pretty harsh sandpaper, which I have here, and you can sand that knob down. Again, this is quite soft wood, so it will sand easily. If it's a harder piece of wood, you can take it off with a knife or a saw. There we go, that's gone. Then you just sand that to wherever to whatever you've done to the top and sides, and you give that an oil as well. But that is your first coaster done, just like that. Now, obviously, as you get more and more advanced, you can cut them so they stack into each other. I'm not worried about that with these projects. So now we're going to do the next one. We'll try and do that a bit quicker. I'll do the next two a little bit quicker, and then the final one we'll maybe talk through it again, or if you have any questions that you want me to demonstrate while we're doing the fourth one, then you can. But for now, I'll keep stum a little bit, and you can watch me as I work on these. And you can fire any questions to me if you want, Yana, feel free to. Just remember that you've got to try and remember the measurements that you used on your first one. Maybe jot them down on a piece of paper so you remember. I think I can remember. We went 5mm in the end. No, we went 10mm in the end on the outside one. Hello and welcome to everyone, by the way. I'm sure we've had people coming and going, new people coming in. This is the first in a beginner series that I'm doing on wood turning, and we're turning 4 coasters from a piece of spalted beech. The wood is a little bit punky, yes, but it's not too bad. For the purpose that I'm using them for here, the coasters will look fine. We've got a rustic country house, so they'll look lovely and they'll work fine in our kitchen. But you can use whatever wood you want. You can finish them to whatever standard you want to finish them. There's no rules. Once you get confident with using your tools, the world is your oyster with design and shape and finish. I will be talking a bit about shape as I go along as well. I do have some pet peeves when it comes to new projects and shapes for some people. Beginner shapes tend to be very square, and I understand that, you know, you need to get your practice in at turning bowls, basic bowls and spindles, but there's nothing wrong from the very beginning. I would always suggest working on shape and design too, and making it pleasing to the eye. There we go. And then we went 5mm in for our groove. Thank you, JP. Hey, anytime you want lessons, just give me a shout, mate. I know you're probably getting a bit nervous with that show coming up. If you want a stand-in, then just give me a shout. Thank you very much, JP, and I think I saw Chris Cute there as well. Did I earlier? JP and Chris are fellow co-hosts on the, what's it called? Makers International podcast. I was doing a measurement there and just completely sideblinding myself. Yes, Makers International podcast, which happens every Sunday night at 9:30 UK time, which is around about 4:30 Eastern. You can come and join us. We do a podcast about all things maker related. And yeah, it's fun, along with another guy called Richard Morley. So yeah, the four of us talk utter nonsense and have a bit of fun. So come along, join us. I am not an RPT, Kevin, no, nor am I a member of any clubs. My background is that I live here in the west coast of Ireland, in Sligo. We have very few clubs around my area, very few wood turners. And I never really got into the clubs anyway. I've always been a YouTuber. I'm self-taught. I'm wood turning for coming up for 5 years, I believe now. And I've learned everything I know from asking questions, watching professionals, watching YouTube, going to demonstrations. And I've always been a maker. I've always had an artistic background. But no, I am not RPT. I've never really had the interest to be either, to be honest with you. Because that's it, JP, you got it. No, not when I bought the lathe. I wasn't a sellout when I got the lathe. I was a sellout when I got the Sorby GoPro Pro Edge. That's when I became the sellout, because I dared to better myself. Okay, so that's our second one turned. Bring the volume down, speed down on the lathe. And we sand again. As you can see, that one was a bit quicker because I wasn't explaining each move. And you'll find the more experienced you get and the more used to the tools, more confidence you get, the faster you'll get, the less you have to think about stuff. Oh wow, Mark Christopher, I'm sorry to hear that, brother. Thoughts with you and your family. You're having a tough year, man. You know where we are if you need to talk. Ears are always open. Shoulders always there. Bye bye, Brendan. Thank you very much for joining. Hope everything's good your end. I'll catch up with you soon. Love to your wife. If there is anything that anyone would like to see demonstrated in the beginner series, if there's something that you've wanted to try but you've been put off for some reason, or you're unsure about technique or tools that you need, then just ask. You can leave a comment on any of my videos asking, or you can get in touch with me on Facebook, Temple Boy Turnings on Facebook. Woodturning Live with Steve on Instagram, and Temple Boy Turnings on Patreon. The Patreon page is soon to be regenerated and boosted again soon. Going to be putting together goodie bags and stuff. So yeah. And don't forget that I am doing a regular Sunday afternoon live now on Facebook. I did a test show there this evening on Facebook, and it went very well, a lot better than the start of this live anyway, but we'll not talk about that. So there we go, that's number 2 sanded to as much as I want to sand it. Again, it's entirely up to the individual how much you want to sand it, what finish you want to get on it. But tonight is all about the project and the techniques, tools and things needed to do a simple beginner's project. And this is pretty simple spindle turning for a beginner. Now, it's not super easy. There is techniques that you have to learn. There's rules you have to follow, but as long as you do, you should be able to master it. You will make mistakes as you go along. Everyone does, but that's all part of learning. Don't give up. Just keep at it. When your live feed doesn't work, just keep at it. Threaded lid box would be a slightly more advanced project, David, but I could probably do that on a YouTube, on a Facebook Live on a Sunday. That's not a problem. Leona, would you make a note of that for me, please? Thank you. Okay, that's number 2. Yeah, I mean, I don't rule the days, Wayne. You know me, I can jump on at any time. That's pretty much what my channel's all about. I'm not really gonna stick to particular days. I don't tell anybody when to go on. I always work round. If I see someone's going live at a certain time, I'll try and go just before or just after them. I'm not, I'm not there to dominate, nor will. So there you go. There's 2 coasters. You work away, Wayne. That's not a problem. There's 2 coasters there. They're pretty much identical, as you can see. Same thickness, same size, same thing. That's what you want. You want them kind of looking the same, and they're looking nice. So that's 2. I'll do a quick 3rd one. See if we can do this one quicker again. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Leona, can you repeat that? Okay. Thank you. All right, so number 3. Again, we are going to hollow out the center, but we need a measurement again, which is, anyone remember? 10 mil. 10 mil in. Mark a 10 mil circle. Take our spindle gouge and clean out that center part up to our line using a pull cut. Our pull cut is putting the blade, the bottom, wrong camera, the bottom cutting blade flat against the workpiece, just gently touching it, getting it cutting and drawing it towards us. To the depth that we want. I'm guessing the depth. I mean, you can use a lollipop stick with the depth marked on it if you want. It's always a handy little tip. Once we've got some kind of hollow there, we can take our parting tool, bring it up to our line, to our final depth that we decide. I'm going to belt that deep. And then we clean the rest with our gouge. Meet up with that line. You can do a push cut too, which is just riding the bevel against the back of the workpiece, and using the blade just to slowly take away your wood. You're not being heavy-handed with these tools at all. You just want to let the tool do the work. You don't have to push hard. There we go. That's about right. And we'll take our mark again, go in another 5mm, which is where our groove is going to be. Mark all the way around by holding the pen against the tool rest. Make our circle, giving ourselves a guideline. And we're going to use the tip of the gouge again, just gently. We're still coming down, holding the handle down low. Just putting the edge of our tool in, twist it, go back the other way, and just putting what they call a V cut. If you're not confident doing that, you don't have to. You can just start with your flat design and work up from that once you've mastered that. There we go. That's the front face again. Turn the tool rest round again. Marker 10mm. 10mm, by the way, is what is it? Just over a quarter of an inch. 3/8 of an inch. 10mm. There we go. Same thickness again. Take our parting tool. And again, up to our line. Make it a little bit wider so that we reduce the friction. Try not to wander left or right with the cut, because you'll thin your workpiece towards the centre. Stop when you're about an inch from cutting it off, and then round off our edges. Just to give them a bit of shape. Curves are always more pleasing to the eye. There we go. And we're ready for sanding again. Bring down the speed. There we go, ready for sanding again. And once you've done a few of these, it'll, you know, you'll really get used to how the tool feels. These are a really good beginner's project because it's simple. Well, not simple, I hate saying the word simple. It's basic beginner spindle work. There's not too many techniques with the tools needed. You're only using kind of the one angle for each tool. There's not many cuts and rolls, or there's not many coves and beads or things like that, which can be a bit complicated when you're doing spindle turning. We'll get into those when we do a bud vase one day. Yes, Chris, being ambidextrous is very, very, very handy when you're wood turning. You probably saw me there. I did it without even thinking, to be honest with you, and I didn't say it because I didn't want to kind of make the learner, the beginner, think that you have to be able to do it straight away. I just jumped using my left hand there when I was cleaning up these edges. I would recommend that when you are learning to turn, that you learn and you practice using your left hand every now and then, because there's going to be times when you're reaching over, trying to cut at an angle here. Let me zoom out on this. So for instance, if you're using the gouge and you're trying to clean up over here and it's really awkward and you're right-handed, it's very handy to kind of step over here and be able to use your left hand and be able to control it a lot easier and guide with your right hand. So being able to use left and right hand, yes, 100% is a lot easier when wood turning. You'll see most turners that have been doing it for a good number of years use both hands quite comfortably. Good question. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I kind of pretended that it didn't happen, because if I start getting too much into the left and right, I mean, we will go into the left-handed learning, but yeah, good question. Thank you. I'm quite confident using both hands now with most tasks on the lathe. I remember when I was at Thomas, God damn that name, Tomas's house last month. I was giving him a few lessons on how to use the skew. And I did that too. I just jumped from using the right hand to using the left, and he went, whoa, whoa, and he kind of went, hold on now, what did you just do? And I said, oh yeah, I used the left hand, and he started using both then. He was quite good at it, but come the end, wasn't he, Leona? He was. It does come natural. So if you're the sort of person that's been using tools all your life, like I was a plumbing and heating engineer. I've said this before. When I was a plumbing and heating engineer, I'd have to use my left hand to get into some really tight spaces sometimes with spanners and stuff. So I strengthened up both hands. So yeah, it does come naturally for some. So we've sanded that now again to 240 grit. And we're just putting some, this is just mineral oil, or baby oil as we call it here in Ireland or UK. It just smells nicer than your your basic mineral oil. It's got a scent in it because it's made to make babies smell babyish. There we go. So that's number 3 turned. I should just part it off. Have we still got people watching, Leona? Very good. It's good to see that you're staying to the end, folks. I know it's probably a little bit long, but I wanted to get the whole project done. And again, we're going to part it off, just supporting the piece. Go. That's number 3. Now, if it's just your husband and wife situation, 2 is a set. If I was to make how many I needed in my house, I'd need to make about 30. So a set is as big as you want to make it, folks. There we go. 3, the same. Last one. Let's do this. So again, we're going to come around the front. No, we're not. We're going to stay around the side, sorry, until we just face off with the parting tool again. Let me just change the camera so you can see from the side. So, as I said with the last one, I'm going to answer any questions if there's any questions on how to do the last one, but we'll also go through the whole process of how to do it again. So we're going to face off the front using our parting tool. Again, just take a very light cut, having the handle of the tool down low and slowly raising it as we move towards the center. Let the tool do the work. You don't have to push hard. Small amount of pressure, and you won't burn the end of the tool or have the chance of slipping. That's just giving us a slightly flat front. We're going to turn off the lathe, bring the tool back round the front again. Take our measurement, which is 10mm from the edge back in. That's going to give us where we're hollow into, which holds the cup or mug or whatever you're putting, stops it sliding off of the edge of the mat. We're going to use a spindle gouge. Tool rest around about finger thickness away from the workpiece. We're using the flat cutting edge of the tool, and we're going to do a pull cut. Go from the center with a point, pull cut just before our line. Don't take the line away so you can still see it. And we're going to take those cuts nice and gently to roughly where the depth we want, keeping a consistent cut along. Try not to bounce the tool backwards and forwards so that you put ridges in it. Once you've got a bit of a hollow there, you're going to change to your parting tool. You're going to come in up to your line, sneak up to your line, and go down to the depth that matches the others. Again, you can make a depth count or a depth marker with a lolly stick or the end of your pencil, whatever you want, some depth that you want. I can kind of guess the depth that I want. Like I said, they're rustic anyway, they're not going to be super the same. And then again, we'll take our spindle gouge and we pull cut and bring our depth even all the way through. Use the other side of the gouge just by leaning over, just taking that awkward piece there. That's it. Just clean up that centre piece. There's a bit of a bump there. You'll get used to kind of going by eye. What you can do is bring in your edge of your ruler, put it on the tool rest, put it against the piece, and you'll be able to see that you're pretty even all the way along and flat. Marking 5mm from the ring that we just cut, so you're going 15mm from the very edge. And draw your circle again. That is where we're going to put our little detail using the point of our tool. Do what we call a V cut, so it means that we just slightly dig the very end of the tool into where the pencil mark is, causing like a V cut. Not very deep, just gives it a bit of detail. There we go, simple as that. Don't have to go any fancy. Nice little groove. Then we're going to come back round the side again. Our tool rest, leaving it a bit further out, about a finger and a half from your workpiece. I'll zoom that back in for you. There you go. We're going to measure our 10mm width of our coaster, or whatever width that you have decided you want it to be. Some like them a bit thicker and chunkier, some like them a bit thinner. There you go. Take our parting tool, go up to our line, start cutting. Again, we're going to go about 2mm wider than the width of our parting tool. That stops any friction, stops the tool from binding. Don't allow your tool to wander left or right, because you'll make the coaster thinner towards the centre if you do that. Leave about an inch. You need to just sneak up on that line again and do a final cut down to the centre. Then we're taking our spindle gouge again and we're just rounding top and bottom. Just using a twist cut, just twisting the blade round. Riding the bevel all the time. Always ride your bevel with these traditional tools. There you go. And that's ready for sanding again. Bring down your speed. Around about 200-300, or in my case it's about 5 because that's as slow as my lathe goes. And sand from your lowest paper to however good a cut you can get with your tool. Obviously if you've got a couple of tool marks there, you'd need to go with a heavier paper to take them out. You can start at 100 or 80 and then work your way up to whatever finish you want. If you want them really smooth, you need to go to about 400. I'm only going to 220 because, like I said, for speed, and I like the rustic, sported look of these coasters. Any questions, Leona? Any comments? Any remarks? Oh, tea, that's a good idea. I must make myself a cup in a second when I do my closing talk. Well, I'm glad the feed worked out in the end. Has the feed been good since our hiccups? Excellent. I'm delighted. Wayne, I would suggest that before Wednesday you do a couple of tests, because YouTube is really messing about with the settings of these lives. I had everything ready to go. I did a test yesterday that worked perfectly. I had it running for about an hour. I didn't have a hiccup, a hitch or anything. I left the settings exactly how they are. I had the right keys and everything into it. I hit live earlier and it said I was live, but people couldn't see it. Nobody could see it. None of the viewers could see it. It was live my end. I could see it was all working. It said I was live. So I cancelled it and turned it off and set up another live event. And lo and behold, when you went back, you could actually see the first one that I did. So it had recorded it. It had done everything that it was supposed to do. It just hadn't shown the people that wanted to see it. So, yeah. Do some tests. Anyone that's going to be doing lives, because YouTube are really messing with people's heads. Okay, there we go. I'm happy with that. That's to the point that all the rest are. Finish off with whatever finish you want to do. With it being a coaster, would it want to be food safe? I think really it should be. You know, you're going to have kids maybe putting them in their mouth on the table, and dogs licking them and cats licking them and stuff. So babies chewing them, using them as frisbees at each other. So, or is that just my house, is it? Oh God, wives throwing them at you, you know, that kind of thing. So if maybe food safe if they're going to be taking lumps out of your head. I can add more oil into them as I go along. I can add more oil into them tomorrow when they've dried up a little bit. They're quite dry, so they are sucking up the oil quite a lot. So and we part off. Take our parting tool, put it into the slot very gingerly, don't go rushing it. And get your hand ready to part off and catch it. Just need to do a final cut on that one. There we go. Ta-da! Number 4. Sandpaper. This is a heavy sandpaper. This is a 60 grit paper that I'm using just to rub down the middle little nub that gets left over. You can cut them off with a saw. This is quite punky wood, so it's sanding quite easily. There you go. 4 coasters, all the same thickness, all the same design. Nice little beginner's project for anybody that wants to make a few coasters. Everyone uses coasters in their house, and they become a talking point. Someone comes and said, where'd you get your coasters? You can say, actually, I made them. And you can make them stack. You could put a little you know, on the bottom of them you could put a little mortise on them, tenon, sorry, that drops into the top mortise of each one, and they can lock together. But I think what we'll do on the next live is we'll turn a little pot to hold these, which is more spindle turning, but it'll be hollowing out a vessel to hold these, and a little slot cut in it to pull them out. So there you go, 4 lovely little coasters. Any questions while I just put a bit of hot water into my cup with a tea bag? There are people, yes, a lot of people actually do make coasters look like buttons. There's a guy actually has a YouTube video out where he makes button coasters. Yeah, I mean, you know, coasters at the end of the day get dribbles of coffee and stuff on them. If they've got holes in them, then you're going to get little dribbles of coffee going onto your table, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of a coaster, really, I suppose, doesn't it? But yeah, if you want to, I mean, you can also cut them hexagonal on a bandsaw, or even with a handsaw. You can cut them any shape you want. You can have them square. You can mount them on the lathe using, you know, you can cut a square block, how we started, on your faceplate, and you can cut square ones with round cuts into them. You can do anything, but I mean, that's more, like I say, it's a slightly more advanced turning, because you're cutting what they call air and stuff. So I just didn't want to get too involved. As I said, as we move forward, I'm over here making a cup of tea, by the way, folks. Just I'm not ignoring you. I shall be back in 1 second. Yeah, as we move on with these lessons, what we'll do is we'll probably do maybe 6 beginner lessons, and then we'll go to intermediate and then to the more advanced, or something like that. We'll work it that way. But for now, we're going to stick to the simple projects, as it were. Well, I hope that has... I'm going to just go to this camera here so you can see my ugly face. I hope that any beginners that are watching, and future beginners, watch this live afterwards. I hope you've learnt something there. There are other videos out there on how to do coasters. That's how I go about doing them. That's how I learned to do them. These, I think I made coasters, I think they're about the 3rd project I did when I was learning. We needed some, excuse me, let me take a slurp of this. We needed some, so I made some, and we've got more now. I can replace them. But they're a nice simple project. They look nice in the house depending on what wood you use, and once you get used to the tools, that's it. And you don't need a chuck. Like I said, you've got the faceplate and your basic learner tools. If you're watching this video after the live and you have some questions, throw it down in the comments. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, please. It does help me. especially the sharing part. If you like this video, please go off and share it around your friends, and especially if they're into wood turning or they're just starting out. Hopefully it can help them out. I'm also on Patreon. Sorry, go ahead. You're very welcome, Trina, and I hope that helped you. If you do have a go, those of you that have if just learning, or even if you're not learning, if you want to have a try at these, then please feel free to send me a few pictures of them on my Facebook page or on Instagram and in Messenger or whatever. Also, templeboyturnings@gmail.com. You can send them there, and I'll post them on my social medias, and I'd be delighted to show off anything that someone has made from learning from me or being inspired from me. I love seeing that kind of stuff. So if you want to show off your stuff, then send them to me, and yeah, I'll show them off for you. Or I might even show them on future shows. I can put them up and show them off. So if you want stuff, if you've done a project, you want to send me a picture, and I'll put it up on future shows. Maybe we'll make that a segment. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it, Leona? I could do that. Do a show and tell. Exactly. That's it, folks. Who said that? Sorry. Debbie, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for stopping by and watching. It's great to have you there. Maple's on the booze. Yeah, another project that will get you into the workshop. Good man. Yeah, so just a quick recap. Don't forget your safety clothing. That's key. Your basic face shield and some protective clothing. No long sleeves, stuff like that. This is just kind of summarizing the live. Have the correct tools, the basic tools that you get with a new lathe. You would be able to do these coasters. You will definitely be able to do these coasters with whatever you get with a lathe, plus a basic set of tools. I've just proved that you can do that. You'll make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you make mistakes, just walk away, clear the head, come back another time and give it another try. Don't just throw the tools down and say I can't do it. It's not easy. It's not something you just jump in and do. You do need to practice and get used to each tool. Before you start a project like this, throw a piece of pine on the lathe, or a soft piece of rubbish wood that you're not worried about using, an old tree trunk or something like that, and just cut grooves and shapes and things into the wood, and just get to feel what the tools feel like. Look up on YouTube at beginner shows and learn how to use each tool. There's some great wood turners out there that have got great beginner series too. This is just my take on the beginner series, and I hope you look forward to doing more. I do anyway. So thank you very much. That's pretty much it. I will see you all again Sunday, definitely. I might do another live in between, but that will just be a pop-up live. But definitely Sunday on Facebook. What time will I say? What's the best time? Just after dinner. What time do people have their dinner on a Sunday? Do you know what? I'll do it 6 o'clock Sunday evening. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, 60 o'clock. 6 o'clock Sunday on Temple Boy Turnings or Wood Turning Live with Steve's Facebook page. If you're not already following me on Facebook, head over there, follow me, and you'll see the lives pop up. It's a new thing I'm doing. It went very well this evening, and I will be doing a project, maybe a cup for whoever that was. Was it Joy is doing cups? Maybe I'll do a cup on Sunday and see how we go with that. I'm not sure if they have handles that you're doing. I have done cups with handles and that, but we'll do that. That's not a problem. But until then, folks, do you know what? Thank you very much for joining me. It's been a blast. And I'm glad we got through the whole project. And I'm glad that we actually got there in the end. And we're just on the 2 hours too, are we? That's good. Just over the 2 hours. That's all right. Thank you very much, guys. I shall see you again once I work out how to end these new live streams. That's the button there. All right, guys, thanks. I will see you again Sunday on my show on Temple Boy Turnings, and then on the podcast after that, 9:30 Sunday evening, Makers International podcast. Make sure you go over, subscribe, and follow us, and join in with the chitty chats. It's all about, hopefully, if we get it right, we're going to be talking about the Maker Bus that I'm hoping to get up and running as soon as possible, because I'm quite excited about it. So, see ya! Thanks, guys! Bye! Bye!